What is up everyone, Hero276 here, and welcome to today's video, and welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be taking a look at CRUSTLE in the Summer Cup with an unorthodox moveset. CRUSTLE typically runs the moveset of Smackdown, X-Scissor, and Rock Slide, but today I'm going to be substituting Smackdown for Fury Cutter. This will give CRUSTLE increased speed and better grass type coverage for my Whiscash lead. The team, as I mentioned, has a Whiscash lead with a Mantine and a CRUSTLE, and CRUSTLE with the move of Fury Cutter allows it to effectively counter grass types. I'm just basically testing this out, seeing how it works, and it actually worked pretty well. So you'll be seeing that in these battles, but before we dive into that, I just want to give a special shout out to my Spotify page. If you enjoy the music used in this video and other videos, consult my Spotify where you'll have access to all of my music. That being said, let's jump right into today's video.
And we are starting today's video off with a tough lead Swampert into Azumarill. Now this is tough for a couple of reasons. Swampert just gets outbulked here, and CRUSTLE is weak to Azumarill in the back. My opponent throws just before I get to the Earthquake, meaning this is only the Ice Beam. I can safely no-shield that. What I'm actually going to look to do is bank all of the energy onto Swampert, since it probably comes into play later, and I'm going to send in the Mantine. Mantine will fire off the Aerial Ace. That gets Azumarill to about half health. My opponent sends in Shiftry, and this is very odd for my opponent. Mantine here can take a Leaf Blade pretty well, and we hit back for super effective with both of our charge moves. Now I am stuck with Ice Beam. I do recommend Water Pulse in the future, and I'll get to that at the end. But from here, we're just going to chuck some Aerial Aces here at the Shiftry. Aerial Ace number 2 is going to force the shield from my opponent. Opponent has to throw, or else I do get the farm down. My opponent will throw their energy, and I will allow this to happen. From here, I'm going to send in the CRUSTLE and get a couple of Fury Cutters worth of energy for the head start. My opponent sends in the Azumarill, but the increased speed allows me to get to the Rock Slide relatively quickly. Azumarill is going to no-shield. They end up throwing their energy. I'm going to shield up the CRUSTLE. I hope that they have something weak in the back. Azumarill not switching out. I am going to overfarm past the Rock Slide because they just threw their energy, and I'm going to commit the second shield here. Ice Beam, going to be shielded. I overfarm as much as I can, and I have double Rock Slide. Rock Slide is going to KO Azumarill from this range. My opponent has Scyther in the back, and this is going to get one shot by the Rock Slide, and we take the win. Hopping into game number 2, and leads don't get much better than this as we lead into Tentacruel. My opponent is actually going to stay and play this out, and this tells me they are probably weak to Swampert somewhere else in the back. I'm going to full send the Earthquake here. I am not messing around. Earthquake picks up the knockout. They try to call the bait. They send in a Razor Leaf Shadow Victreebel. I send in Mantine. It's Chandelure in the back, and this game is over. Again, Water Pulse would be very helpful here, but against a glassy Pokemon like Chandelure, I just need to go straight Aerial Ace. So my opponent will commit the shield. I'm going to let this move go through. They bait with the Flame Charge, and yeah, this one is basically over. Going to overfarm, go for the Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace will come very close to KOing. My opponent does decide to shield, and I'm just going to let this go once again. I can send in the Swampert, and Swampert should be able to outpace to a Hydro Cannon. I overfarm as much as I can, get off the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon will KO from this range. My opponent only has the Victreebel in the back. I do fire off the Hydro Cannon for some chip damage. I didn't really need to do this, but I can now come in with the CRUSTLE. CRUSTLE is going to be able to massively outpace here to the X-Scissor. This will be enough to KO the Shadow Victreebel after, of course, my opponent rage quits the app, and we're going to be able to take the win. Hopping into game number 3, picking up a lead into Lickitung. Now, Lickitung does quite well up against Swampert, so I'm going to switch into the Mantine. Mantine going to be able to outpace to the Aerial Ace, but my opponent makes a catch, and I saw a Mud Shot. This is a Whiscash that they caught on, so I have to be a little bit careful in case it is a Blizzard. My opponent does not farm up enough for it. I can safely call that this is just a Mud Bomb, and now I'm in business. I can go for the Ice Beam. Ice Beam will not KO, but it will get them in a range where I could probably Wing Attack farm down. My opponent farms up a lot of energy. I have a tough call to make. I'm going to let it go. My opponent has Blizzard. They full send it, but I do survive. and I'm able to have some residual energy too for whatever decides to come in. They send Tropius, I'm only getting to one move, so I'm going to full send the Ice Beam, and they farm down. I send in CRUSTLE. CRUSTLE no longer running smackdown, it's stuck with Fury Cutter, which hits for neutral, but it does allow me to spam out these rock slides very quickly. As you can see, I'm going to be able to overfarm quite significantly and throw the rock slide. The opponent is going to give up their shield. From here, I make a catch onto Swampert, what should hopefully be the Aerial Ace. My opponent has not shown Leaf Blade, which is very interesting. So now my opponent is going to switch back into the Lickitung, but I have the Hydro Cannon ready to go. Hydro Cannon will do some solid damage on the Lickitung. From here, I am going to let this move go through. They did not build up enough for the Power Whip. It is just the Body Slam. Gonna overfarm. I make the Earthquake. Earthquake hits slightly harder than the Hydro Cannon. Opponent might not be expecting the damage, and down goes Lickitung. From here, it's just CRUSTLE versus Tropius, but I do have the speed here in the Rock Slide. Fury Cutters are not doing a whole lot of damage. I have to hope that Rock Slide can KO from this health range. Tropius is very bulky. Rock Slide picks up the knockout, and we take the win. Hopping into game number 4, and we see an interesting lead into Obstagoon. Now, Obstagoon hasn't been around a while because of the rise of Annihilate. I switch into the Mantine. Mantine gonna be met here with a Venusaur for my opponent. And this is actually very good for me because this is a Razor Leaf Venusaur. Their pacing is very slow, which means after throwing one Aerial Ace, I can get the full farm down. My opponent sends in Swampert, and they are completely core broken by the Mantine, and because of this, we just completely win this game. I can align my Swampert onto theirs, and I of course have the Fury Cutter CRUSTLE to take care of the Obstagoon. My opponent will not be able to KO with a Surf. It's very interesting from the Swampert. You definitely want to be using that Elite TM for Hydro Cannon, but my opponent, they catch the Aerial Ace onto their Obstagoon. It's a nice catch, but it's not going to be able to save them, as I have the Fury Cutter CRUSTLE. CRUSTLE doing a lot of damage here with these super effective Fury Cutters as well. We have good energy pacing too, so I'm going to overfarm, but as you see, I get too greedy. I'm going to have to burn a shield. My opponent goes for the Night Slash. I now have back-to-back X-Scissors. X-Scissor number 1, gonna be forcing the second shield from my opponent, but I have X-Scissor number 2. This will KO the Obstagoon from this health range. It is just the Swampert in the back. I'm gonna let the Surf go through here. I'm actually just going to let this go through. My own Swampert should be able to take care of theirs. And now, I just need to make it to the Hydro Cannon. I lose CMP, but a Surf is not going to KO from this health range. I can safely let this go through. And now, I fire off the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon will KO their Swampert, and we take the win. Hopping into the next game, we see a terrible lead into Superior. What I'm going to look to do is safe switch into one of my 2 Grass-type counters. I send in the Mantine first. My opponent is throwing their energy, which means this is likely a Leaf Tornado Superior. They're going to fire off the Leaf Tornado. We do not see the attack fall, so a little bit of luck ends up going my way. They send in Tentacruel, and I'm actually perfectly okay with this. Tentacruel, not going to like the energy head start here, especially when it's not double debuffed by the Leaf Tornado. The opponent is going to shield up the next Aerial Ace, and I'm perfectly fine with this. From here, I can just let the Mantine go down, but they end up going for the Acid Spray to give themselves a little bit more farm, but that enables me to reach another Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace is going to force the second shield for my opponent. I now send in the Swampert, and Swampert is going to be able to connect here with the Earthquake. I first commit my own shield, I get baited with the spray, which is quite unfortunate. They pivot into Superior, and I send in the CRUSTLE. CRUSTLE gonna do a lot of damage here with this X-Scissor, and the Fury Cutter enables me to get there and outpace the Superior by quite a bit. X-Scissor actually KOs. They have Hisuian Arcanine in the back. A really nice spice pick by my opponent. But again, Fury Cutter just paying dividends. We outpace to the Rock Slide and pick up the knockout. It's just the Tentacruel in the back, and the threat of a move forces my opponent to throw their energy. But guess what? I'm going to be able to make it to one more Rock Slide. Rock Slide's going to KO the Tentacruel, and we take the win. Hopping into the next match, picking up a lead into Whiscash. Now this is actually a very good lead for Swampert because Hydro Cannon costs less energy and Scald got the nerf, so their chances of lowering my attack are actually decreased compared to previous seasons. So now I'm going to fire off the Hydro Cannon. It's going to be enough to two-shot. I try to make the catch, and they throw their energy anyways. They end up going for the Scald. That's perfectly okay. My opponent sends in Charge-a-Bug, and I'm very glad I baited this out, because this would have crushed the Mantine anyways, so it's better to get this matchup out of the way. Charge-a-Bug no shields the first Aerial Ace, but there's a second one where that came from. Let's see if my opponent was counting. Aerial Ace forces the shield from my opponent, and that's really good for me. What I end up deciding to do is waiting my switch clock. I'm going to send in the Crustle. Health on Crustle isn't too important because of the Whisk Cache in the back, so what I'm going to look to do is body all of this energy here from the Charge-a-Bug. Now Charge-a-Bug going to be firing off the double X Scissors here. X Scissor will start to get me low. My opponent sends their final Pokemon. It is Vigoroth. But with a shield advantage, I actually should be in a pretty good spot. My opponent will shield up the first Hydro Cannon, and from here, I'm going to shield up their first Body Slam. Body Slam would do a lot of damage here to the Glassy Swampert. I'm going to overfarm to another CMP tie, and once again, playing to it, my opponent has to let this go through. They have no shields left. Hydro Cannon's going to be enough to comfortably two-shot, and what I'm going to do is farm up to the CMP again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I get off the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon is going to KO the Vigoroth from this health range. Swampert is quite low. Let's see. They send in Charge-a-Bug. I get the catch on the Crustle, and I'm in an amazing spot. X's are KOs. But let's see, I make the Hydro Cannon, I watch for the catch, they try to go for it onto the Whisk Cache, but I get too greedy with the overfarm. They had enough for the Mud Bomb, and I end up losing the game. Looking to get back on the right track in the last battle, picking up a lead into Charge-a-Bug. Charge-a-Bug very comfortable here for the Swampert because of the Volt Switch resistance. Gonna go for the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon is gonna be able to two-shot from this health range. The opponent is going to no-shield the Hydro Cannon, and now I'm going to no-shield the X-Scissor. They're not going to be able to farm down here with the Volt Switch, so I'm going to over-farm and then fire off the next Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon will KO from this health range. My opponent is going to send in a Greninja, and I'm going to be able to get off a parting Hydro Cannon before they can farm down. Greninja no shields the Hydro Cannon, but that still does over half their health. They get worried about me making another one, so they're forced to throw their energy. They KO with the Night Slash. I'm now going to send in the Mantine. Mantine is going to be able to body this energy quite well. The opponent goes for the Night Slash. As you're going to see, it's not going to do a lot of damage. I should be able to body a second one as well. My opponent realizes that, and they send in Skeledirge. I'm going to bait here, faking the Water Pulse, going for the Aerial Ace. My opponent gives up the shield, and that's really good. From here, I could just go straight Aerial Ace. It will be enough to two-shot the Skeledirge. My opponent lets that one go through. They keep over-farming, and that enables me to get off this third Aerial Ace. The opponent shields that one up, and from here, I'm just going to let this go through. The opponent baits with the Disarming Voice. It's not enough to KO. I save the Mantine, send in the Crustle. Crustle now can start shielding. My opponent baits again, and now it's going to be a race. Can I outpace to the Rock Slide? Thanks to the speed from Fury Cutter, I get off the Rock Slide. Rock Slide will KO the Skeledirge, and now it's just the Greninja, and all I can do here is Fury Cutter down, and I should be able to take the win. Overall, I thought Fury Cutter on Crustle provided me with some mixed results. On the one hand, you have increased energy generation, which gives Crustle a completely different effectiveness profile, but also allows it to spam out its charge moves more frequently. On the other hand, you're doing less damage as compared to SmackDown, and Fury Cutter's coverage isn't as relevant in the current meta. However, I still felt as though I liked Fury Cutter a little better than SmackDown due to the increased flexibility. So that might be something that I consider going forward. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.